Welcome back, listeners, to the BizBlend podcast, where today business is meeting creativity. And of course, hustle meets heart. Now, today, listeners, it's going to be a very interesting conversation because I am joined by Emmy Award-winning producer Dan Fisher, principal at Bottle Rocket Media. And we are going to dive into the art of storytelling, creative leadership, and then how video shapes brand success. So stay tuned for insights that pack a punch. And yeah, I'm your host, Sana, as always. So let's quickly get into the conversation. And Dan, welcome to the show. And I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Brilliant. Dan, your career spans across editing, producing, and leading a creative agency. So, because although I'm very much new in the creative field, but I would love to know, in your view, Dan, what truly makes a compelling story in today's fast content world? Because everywhere we see, yes, we see stories, we see journeys and all that, but what really makes a compelling story?
Well, I think if anybody could actually answer that in today's culture, that's the golden ticket. I feel like, compelling is subjective. And so, there are elements that we all, if we've been doing it for a while or if we're educated, we all do. We infuse emotion. If it's video, we cast it properly. If it's the written word, we try and choose the right dialect to communicate where we are. But I think a big part of it in what we do is knowing who our audience is. My team spans from 23 to 60 years old, and I can assure you that on a daily basis, the media consumption just in my team alone is vastly different. I have members of my team who don't even know what TikTok is, and I have members of my team who only know what TikTok is. So it really does depend for us when we're talking about what's compelling is who we're trying to communicate with.
Hmm. Wow. That's really interesting. And you know, since we are talking about today's world, do you think then attention spans have changed the fundamentals of storytelling, or it's just how we package the story? Because often we see these common elements working there. Shock element or surprise element or something which is really very weird or kind of sparks our attention because it's something different from usually what we can expect.
I feel like the fundamentals of storytelling can't change, because the goal of any story, is there's two, is to deliver some sort of information and connect on a deeper level. Techniques are changing for sure. You just said it. There's an element in social media right now, there's a lot of shock happening. I think the way, stories are edited is a little bit different. A lot of times people are leading with the punchline or the climax, and then they go back to tell the story because they know that they have to capture somebody's attention before they swipe away. But if you if you look at story as, sort of all pervasive where a photograph tells a story, and that's one image that doesn't change versus, any sort of higher end production that involves effects and editing, right? It really all just comes down to how are you connecting with your audience and delivering the information that you're trying to deliver.
So the basics remain the same. Yeah, that we will see
I
it.
think they have to. Growing up,
Mm.
I remember my father with a big bulky camera on his shoulder, running out of film in the middle of a family trip or something like that. But the results were the same. Like, now myself as a father, like I have my phone in my back pocket and I used to chase my kids around and I have too many photos, right? And over time, it's the same thing. I have a great image of my family when I was growing up because of and it's one because my dad only had a certain amount of film, and now with my own family, I have one photo that represents memory because more than one is unnecessary, and I just wound up deleting. I take 75, delete 74. So at the end of the day, it's the way it's received by the people who are getting the information does not change.
I agree. I agree. Okay, now talking about creative leadership, I mean, you are heading Bottle Rocket Media, and creative leadership. I feel it's a tricky balance because creative can be subjective. What, as you mentioned, you have people who do not even know about or don't use TikTok, then you have people who know only TikTok. So how do you foster originality and innovation within a team while also meeting client demands and business goals? Because that's, sometimes situations can be really very, kind of colliding, or the creative thought process can be different.
Yeah. I think the most important aspect of running a creative team is to create an environment where everybody is comfortable speaking up.
Yeah.
Ideas, it takes 1 second to come up with a great idea, but you might have been thinking about that idea for a week, or a month, or even longer. And so I think first you need an environment where there's no such thing as a bad idea and everybody is comfortable speaking up. And that's actually very hard to do because everybody comes to the table with preconceived notions, and um, most creative people are insecure about their ideas, from the most practiced to the beginners. Um, and then I think the other part, which I already kind of mentioned, is giving the team this space to work. There's nothing harder than being approached with, "I have a deadline in a couple hours," or even, "I have a deadline tomorrow. I need to come up with some ideas."
Yeah.
The more time you can get to put behind the creative process, it's unquestionable the results will be better.
Hmm. And from my experience, I mean, sometimes I'm not just generalizing. Uh, Sometimes external discussions, or working with clients, it can sometimes unintentionally stifle creativity. So in such scenarios, particular scenarios, Jan, how do you keep that creative edge sharp without compromising?
Well, I feel like sometimes I'm in the business of compromising. So, uh, a big part of what we do is help other people find their vision or find their story or develop their brand. And so I kind of live in two worlds. The one world where it's like we do original content and we do whatever we want and we really push the levels of creativity. And the other is working within a client's resources, budget, and brand limitations. So I don't find talking with the clients to be a challenge to creativity. I find that um, clients unintentionally bring a perspective that forces me to challenge my own creativity. In that, like, a lot of times in a real world example would be the edit process when we're making videos. Um, Clients always have ideas on what will work, what will tell the story better, and they're not always right. But in in suggesting an idea that is so far off base from where we might be,
Mhm.
it makes me question, in a positive way, it makes me question the choices we've made, and there's always something I find that allows me to upgrade my idea. I might not I might not use their idea completely, I might not use it at all, but I will always consider it and put it up against what we did. And then you know, if I don't have a reason why I don't use their idea, then I will try and use it. But it always makes me rethink in a different way. And then the end result is always um well, better is a subjective word, but is always positive.
Yeah, I understood. And it's then again, this is more of a pragmatic approach to this, instead of just outrightly dismissing it. So yeah, that's quite a lot.
Well, we're being hired to we're being hired to tell your story or to enhance your presence online or elevate it certainly. That that you know, uh, I'd be crazy not to really consider your ideas.
Yeah, true. That's true. And Dan, since you have worked across industries and then Fortune 500s and then small businesses, I am really, really interested to, I mean, curious to know um, how this tangent of or the leadership and the storytelling part, how does it shift when you are working with global big brands versus grassroots organization?
So the technical approach is the same. The the thing that we need to consider again, I think, is the audience. When I'm working with global big brands, one of the first questions that comes up is how many languages are we delivering the product in? Which, of course, if it's more than one, dictates often how we create, right? Are we gonna have we will have fewer talking heads on camera, perhaps, as an example. But it doesn't really change much for us in the way we approach a concept because, the story is still gonna be, king.
Yeah. Hmm. And do you think that small brands they actually have more storytelling freedom, or that's a myth that we kind of tell ourselves?
I think small brands have the luxury of maybe being more nimble,
Oh.
which is to say they don't need approval by, as many as a dozen different people or levels of management. The fewer people there, you walk in a room, you come up with an idea, you go out and you create it, and it's good, right? That's the luxury of a small brand. A larger brand with a lot of eyes on it, every move they make seems to be more precious. I try and promote the idea that that doesn't need to be the case because, you know, um, the old school way of thinking is you're making a 30-second commercial, and from there you're developing a couple of other assets. But really now, everything is so disposable, even the expensive content that, I encourage all of my clients at any size to be willing to take a few more chances, because if it doesn't work, money aside, you don't lose anything these days because there's so much saturation.
Mm. So nimble, irrespective of whether it's a large organization or a small brand, I think being nimble is it really really pays off.
Yeah, I think you have the ability to test a lot of things and really find what your audience is looking for and develop it from there. I don't think approaching it with a one and done mentality or where you have to get it absolutely right on the first time out, I think is prohibitive.
Hmm. Do you have any you know interesting not exactly case study or an example where you worked with, I mean, a big brand or a small one, and you kind of got surprised that okay, this was something I thought it's not working but it actually worked because you know it is so dynamic. Sometimes you think, okay, this might be really um doesn't look like logical, but let's just go with it. Let's see. And then boom, it kind of had great numbers in there, and it kind of struck a chord with the target audience, or the people.
Trying to think of any surprises. I mean, what you're suggesting is, which we believe strongly, is that, in our case, the client, uh, oftentimes we're learning what the brand is, on the first engagement, and so we rely on their expertise on the brand and the industry, um, until, the second or third time out where we have more understanding of what the brand is trying to do. Me think of surprise. I think my surprises have been more the other way, and I think most creatives can identify with this, where you create something and you think it's gonna be, um, a huge success, and it does fine, but it doesn't rise to the level that you anticipated.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But nothing that went the complete opposite way, no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it feels like the content has to perform more than ever today. So I
I'd say my biggest surprises were when I was working on the Oprah Winfrey Show, because I wasn't the audience for that show, that I wasn't the natural demographic for that show, so we created a lot of content for television that I didn't understand, really I w I just really didn't understand that it was, received as well as it was.
Oh, okay, okay. And what was the biggest learning from that?
Uh, One, that I have, an uncanny ability to make millions of
Okay.
people cry on a regular basis,
Okay.
um, and, 2, that you never know. I mean, you really never know. Like, how many times a year does a major studio come out with a blockbuster film and it doesn't do well at the box office, and then another independent film makes, 10, 15 times its original budget. Like, you really you can take educated guesses, and you can take all the steps that make sense in the moment, but you just really never know what's gonna resonate with people. And if you bring it back to what we're talking about, content on a regular basis, even more of a reason to take chances when you're making content.
Wow, interesting. Fascinated, Dan. Great, great. So before we wrap up, if our listeners would like to connect with you, what is the best way to do that?
The best way to do that is my company website is bottlerocketmedia.net. I am on Instagram. My personal Instagram is Lively Fisher, but also on all the major um, social media platforms. If you search Bottle Rocket Media, you can find a lot of content that we're creating all the time.
Great. I'll have all the links in the show notes and there for our listeners. And Dan, this was really, really refreshing take, especially with regards to the leadership lessons and then your creative wisdom. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Great.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. And to all the listeners, don't forget to connect with Dan. I'll have all the links in the show notes. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us, BizBlend, for more such unfiltered conversations on building or leading or innovating in business. And see you next time. This is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.